My name is Rachel Moss. I am an executive function coach and I am also the professional development specialist here at Educational Connections. And today we are talking the middle school leap, why strong executive function skills are a game changer. And middle school is one of the most exciting times for students and families. I taught middle school ELA for a number of years, and the kids that were coming into my room, they were so excited about those big kid projects. They were going to write essays, read the harder books. But it was also a time where that rigorous material, regardless of the subject, because it's middle school, also comes with a higher demand on students' executive function skills. In middle school, as kids are sharpening their thinking, they are also more frequently keeping track of things. They are challenged with executive function tasks. They have to change classes more frequently in middle school. They have a more in-depth learning management system online. They are juggling all kinds of classes and assignments. And this is also an age where you're really getting into those extracurriculars. That's what we're going to talk about today, the executive function demands that middle schoolers face. And if we can support these, we can really help our favorite middle schooler. And we have a great leader through this journey today. Sarah is here. Sarah, would you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your expertise with executive function and middle schoolers?
Yes. Hi, everyone. So happy to be here. So I bring over 25 years of experience in education, having taught everything from kindergarten through 12th grade in both public schools and college prep academies in Oregon, Washington, and Texas. And as a parent of three, two of mine are neurodivergent. So that kind of brings in a whole nother, level of all of this. And it really has shaped my work. And through that experience, it naturally led me to specialize in supporting those neurodivergent learners within private academies because they don't have all of the special education and all of the things available to them. So this kind of became a really passion of mine and kind of a niche, there. Currently, I'm in a public middle school teaching English language arts and actually had the opportunity this year to teach an entire class of neurodivergent, which we call gifted and talented. So we'll talk about that. That is part of neurodivergent. But I've worked with students from 6th through college at Educational Connections. I'm an executive function coach as well as a tutoring. I do subject tutoring as well. But I just love helping them build confidence and independence and giving them practical tools for learning. But I am especially excited about today's topic because it's a total game changer at middle school. And this age is where they can develop strong habits, create strong habits, and those systems are going to make all the difference in the future.
Yeah. So you mentioned your extensive background in schools, and you also mentioned that you're an executive function coach here with Educational Connections. Would you tell us a little bit about what a typical session looks like for students, both now in the summertime, because I know you and I are both working with kids all summer long, and also during the school year?
Yes. So our typical session has 4 parts. And so really it is we check in with the student. Any of you that have middle schoolers, you know that relationship is a huge thing with middle schoolers. So really this is our little kind of bonding time. We're checking in about the week. We're checking in how things are going. Usually, I'm sure Rachel, you get this too. We get the friend drama and all the things, especially at middle school. We got to get that out of the way so we can get to the work. So we talk about that, check in about that, and then we go straight to their learning management system, which Canvas, Schoology, those kinds of things. And we make a plan. So we make a plan together, we do that, and then we get right to work and get it done because we want them to experience success within these sessions because we're always looking at this, gradual release of responsibility. So we're wanting to show them and model it and then give it to them and then allow them to flourish on their own. And then the very last part is reflection, which is so important at the middle school because we're not self-reflectors at middle school. And so we teach them self-checking. We go back and we look at what are our obstacles, which we weave in some flexible thinking, which is part of executive function, looking towards the week. What happens? We've made this fantastic plan, but what happens if it goes awry? So that's kind of what our typical session looks like. Now, summer, we get the opportunity to work on these skills specifically with our very robust curriculum we have for EF. And so we get to, we don't have all the work to kind of our poor middle schoolers are taxed. And so we get to clear that out of the way as far as their work and really concentrate on the skill building so that when we come to the fall, we can be referring to that and we've built that strong foundation. So summer is just a super fun time to be able to do that.
Yeah. And I notice as you're talking that what you're really pointing out for us is that executive function skills are taxed in middle school.
Yes.
And that even when you're working with kids in the summer, it is in order to strengthen those skills. Would you talk to us a little bit about why executive function is so taxed for our favorite middle schoolers?
Yes. So part of that reason is we've come out of elementary, and what I hear a lot from parents and students, school used to be really, really easy. And now what? And I don't know what's happened. Well, there's a few things happening. One, some structure has been lost, and we have a whole lot more at us. We have more complex academic tasks. We have a lot more social demands because we've got, all of the activities and the sports and the clubs and all the stuff. But their brains are still developing all of these skills and they're having to figure out how to manage all of this, let alone be successful in school. While at the same time, they're going through a lot of hormonal and physical changes at this age, and where brain development is, there's some pruning going on with synapses to strengthen our pruning. Our frontal lobe is not developed till 25. Middle school, for whatever reason, because of brain development, feels really messy. And a lot of times parents are like, I don't even know my kid anymore. And I said, just hang on until about 10th grade. They'll come back to you. But it just really is part of brain development and what happens. And this is why having a coach come alongside to help that. And just, to mention, so we're all on the same page, but when we're talking about executive function skills, we're talking about time management. We're talking about organization. We're talking about flexible thinking, working memory, self-checking, task initiation. These are the skills that we're talking about that seem to really be lacking. Also, what I found, if you're a middle schooler, you have executive function dysfunction. That has been my experience just again, because of all that brain development that has happened. And then
Mhm.
coupled with emerging research that is coming out suggesting that the excessive exposure to fast-paced digital content is starting to manifest itself with behaviors that look like ADHD. So again, making that executive function, that self-regulation, that self-checking, all of those really great skills to get in there are so important. Now, on top of that, if you have a neurodivergent student, then you definitely have executive function dysfunction happening on a lot of places. And so
Yeah.
again, this is the time to really start building those skills and doing those things. When we're talking about neurodivergent, we're looking at medical things, ADHD, autism. When we're talking about cognitive issues, we're looking at dyscalculia, dysgraphia, dyslexia. We're also looking at giftedness. And a lot of times, like in my class that I taught, these gifted students, a lot of them also struggle with ADHD or have autism. Well, we call those twice exceptional. And so again, making sure that we have all of those systems in place so that they can be successful in their future.
Yeah. And I love like when you were just talking, what I was really keying in on is how you were identifying the areas where our middle schoolers struggle the most. And these are things I know you and I always talk about. The one
Yes.
thing that I'm so blown away with is how you articulate the need to learn certain skills, like the assumptions that the grown-ups sometimes make. Would you
Mhm.
talk to us about where our middle schoolers struggle when it comes to executive function?
So as you can see on this list, and any parent that has had a middle schooler are like, yep, 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 yep,
Yeah.
and all the things. And to be honest with you, all of these things create that last part about anxiety in school. And
Mhm.
our students are already super overwhelmed. They're super overwhelmed. It's affecting their self-esteem. And that is just impacting, honestly, executive skill development. So, I'll give you an example. So I had a student that would not talk to teachers, but it was because due to these issues, they procrastinated too much. They had perfection paralysis. They didn't know how to get started. They had missing assignments out the wazoo. They had very poor follow through. So he was already feeling so bad about himself. He absolutely refused to do that. And then just to make a mention, when you have missing assignments, now we're talking skill gaps because those things are actually made so that they can progress to the next thing. So his mama thought he was in a very much a defiance mode. And so, that's what was happening because he wouldn't do this. Well, we were able to come along and really work with him through this. And then all of that decreased. And then he was like talking to his teachers, and it's like the heavens opened and the angels sang. And the crazy thing was, many of these things were also manifesting physically, and he was having a lot of stomach issues. And
Mhm.
so it was crazy when we worked on the executive function skills, all of his stomach issues were starting to get resolved and starting to lessen a whole lot. So, that's a really great thing. The other thing, a lot of the how to learn piece, that's the part you're talking about that adults come in and just think,
Yeah.
oh, they already know how to learn.
Yeah, they know how to take notes. They know how to keep a binder. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they know to do all those things, and they just don't. And again, sometimes at middle school, because there's that pruning thing happening, they might have at one time, but now it's like, oh, who is this child that is what happened? The aliens took my son or daughter. So this is again working with those things and making, consistency and coaching with them. So I had another example is I had a parent that was convinced that their student had a motivation problem. I get that a lot from middle school parents. And again, looking at this list, these were symptoms. This is what you see when we're having some of these things. Again, lots of missing assignments. Student was brilliant, figured out how to game the system. This was actually one of my my gifted kids. And so they were brilliant. However, because they figured out how to game the system and how many assignments they did not have to turn in,
Yeah.
they missed some skills. And so that really started to look like a motivation issue, but it really wasn't. So again, we started to be able to help, started to be able to fill gaps and do all of that. And then we were able to get her back on track. The problem is when that happens in middle school, that catches up when you're in high school and you're in AP classes. And all of a
Right.
sudden, all the training wheels are off, which is why it's so important right now to fix those holes in those gaps.
Yeah. And that's what you're talking about right now. You're talking about like middle school is the
Yes.
prime time for intervention. I,
Yes.
I mean, I work with middle schoolers in my sessions as well. And that thing that you just highlighted, the gamification, I,
Mhm.
I see this so much more in middle schoolers than I do in my high school or college kids. They're
Yes.
like, well, if the homework's not graded, I'm not going to do it.
Yes.
No. So like if we can start to work with our favorite middle schoolers now, we can start to supercharge their skills and then help them as they're going into high school, going into college. And I love that you brought up the AP classes because I have so many middle schoolers that in those 6, 7, and 8, they're thinking about AP science, AP US history. Do you see that kind of stuff too?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and especially with those giftedness kids, and again, we're talking neurodivergent, right? That's their track that they're on. And so, and even those kids that aren't necessarily labeled as gifted, like they're motivated, but they have no idea how to get there. Like they're just so overwhelmed with the tasks in front of them. And I tell parents this all the time, middle school is the perfect time to pull back and to allow them to fail a little bit safely. And so, because the stakes are low, really, sixth and seventh grade, pretty low. Eighth grade, we're starting to maybe take some high school classes. So, again, the earlier we start, I love, love, love starting with sixth graders because that is just, they're just starting to transition into middle school. It's before all the wheels have fallen off. Rachel, I'm sure you've had this experience. We have parents that come to us, all the wheels have fallen off, and we're in crisis mode. And
Yeah.
so, while yes, we can come along and we can help and do that, it's so much easier and just calmer and satisfying to just come along from the beginning to do that. So,
And I gotta say too, summer is a great time. If
yes.
if this is connecting with anybody, what we're talking about, we want to tell you a little bit about what our sessions are like and just highlight the fact that summer can be an amazing time to start students off on this journey when it's a lot less pressure, so that
Mhm.
when those grades start rolling in the fall, we already have a good foundation. Would you tell us about how we work with middle school students in our sessions?
We have this great EF program that we work that you had just mentioned. It has over 6 units, has over 35 very robust, interactive, engaging modules.
Mhm.
Just from what you can see here, you can see why summer would be an important time to work through this without that added stress of school. So
Mm.
we're looking at all those things. It does this thing called a Metacog survey, which I always love data. I always love research. I
Yeah.
want to prove this is where we start and how are we measuring success? I'm always starting with the end in mind as the coach. So what we do is we take this right here, this Metacog survey that is done within our program, and we actually give parents a copy of it. They get that really pretty pie chart there. What I love about this, it shows students not only their weaknesses, because we have a tendency to kind of focus on, oh my gosh, what are they weak in, but it also shows their strengths.
Yeah.
And I'm all about starting where their strengths are. Again, we want to help them see that they are capable, they can succeed, they can be successful. So we have their strengths, we identify where their weaknesses are, and then this shows us the top 10 lessons. Again, there's like over 35 that are going to give us the biggest bang for our buck to really start on and helping them. Now, because we tailor this to every student, we don't just rely on this, but as coaches at Educational Connections, we work through something called stages of change. So once we identify where a student might be weak in, we then see how willing they are and ready to start on this, on changing. Because in my experience, and Rachel, I'm sure you've had the same, the worst place to start somewhere is where a kid is like, I don't need to change and
Yeah.
I'm not changing. Guess what?
Yeah.
We're not starting there. Now, that usually is the parent's biggest button because, of course, that's the one that they see. But I just want to encourage parents, we have a side door, back door operation. So we start with the things that they are able to see. Again, a lot of times in my experience, it's been the reason why they're so, no, I'm not changing, is because one, it seems hard.
Mhm.
They don't have a vision for what that future is going to look like.
Yeah.
And they've probably tried it, I call it white knuckled it on their own, and we're not super successful. So
Yeah.
once that we build trust with them, we get them to be, where they're at, we work with their strengths, and then we can start to really work on those things that are, causing the most angst maybe in the home.
Absolutely. And I know that everybody in our webinar today really wants to dive into some strategies that we can start to use with kids at home. So you have identified skills that make the biggest difference in high school, and we're going to talk about how to use these in conversations we're having with our favorite middle schoolers. So would you walk us through the skills we're going to talk about today?
Yes. So, like I've mentioned before, breaking down large tasks. This is like climbing Mount Everest for someone who's never gone on a hike before for middle schoolers. Like they are just so overwhelmed. They're handed, okay, your essay's due in 2 months. Guess what? They have no idea what that looks like. And so what their go-to is, they're just going to procrastinate until the night before and then somehow figure it out or gamify it somehow and figure out how not to turn in all the parts. I mean, that this is
Yeah.
kind of what we've seen. So we really work with that, prioritizing what's most important, creating a weekly game plan. And I really encourage parents to get on board, and I help students become the initiator of that in their homes. Again, taking responsibility for their learning, taking responsibility for their life, kind of coming out from under mom and dad and really emerging as that adult that we're going to want to see. Using tools like calendars and checklists. I know a lot of students, that's been pushed in the last little bit in schools, and so there's this huge resistance to that right now that I'm seeing. But we have so many tools and things in our toolbox that it might not look like the traditional planner, but we can get them
Yeah.
there with the things that we have. And then of course staying accountable over time, because that's building independence, that's building self-management, that's reducing stress in your house, because we join together as a team. And so I'm on your team, Rachel's on your team, our coaches are on your team, and we are team. Put in your favorite middle schooler. That's who we are.
Yeah, we got a deep bench, I gotta say. And
Yes,
every
ma'am.
every student is paired with a coach that's going to be able to connect with them, have those conversations. And I was just in a session with a student that's brand new to me this summer, and we're developing that rapport. And I have like some phrasing I always use with kids. And one of the things I say to them is, "Look, I'm not here to grade you.
Right.
I got no skin in this game." But I care deeply about your success. I'm here to help you get A's. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to penalize you. I'm here to reduce your workload and reduce your stress load, and these are also things that parents can do. I also want to like briefly do an aside because I see that we are getting great questions already in the chat. A little reminder, as soon as you think of something, throw it in the chat. We're going to do Q&A at the end, but I love that folks just feel free to talk in the chat because then we capture everything and we don't miss anybody. So we want to talk our first strategy. And I love this one that Sarah always shares because it's a great way to have, I think, a little bit of like difficult conversations about with kids about prioritizing their tasks. So how can we visually help kids see prioritization?
So as you can see on the screen, so this is actually something that I do with students live. Like I have a jar of sand, a jar of pebbles, and a jar of rocks. And so we talk through them because middle schools are they're very visual and they're very kinesthetic. So they're very hands-on. So I will do this on a session that's online. So we talk through our big rocks are our obligations. These are our have tos. These are like the do's and dies. If we don't do them, life's over. So, and then our aspirations are the want tos. Now, these are also important, obviously, things like, our soccer and our practices and our band and all of the, theater and all those things. But they're not like, if I don't do them, my life is over, but
Right.
still very important. Now, the negotiations are video games, scrolling with friends, binge watching Netflix, all those things. So, what
Yeah.
I show them is, as you know, middle schoolers usually start from the bottom up. So they come home from school, they're immediately scrolling on their phone, they're immediately doing all those things. But what I can show them is when you do it the top row and you start with your sand, you start with your scrolling, you start with all those things, and then you maybe sprinkle in those aspirations. They're still important things, but then you put your big rocks, they don't fit. And this
Yeah.
literally works. Now, when you start over and you put your big rocks in first, and then you put your aspirations and then your negotiations, we can make it all work. Because at the end of the day, the fact that they only got to scroll for 1 hour on crazy cat videos and not the 4 they normally do, nobody gets hurt, right?
Yeah.
So, and they don't feel like they're missing out on anything. But when they've missed that deadline of their outline for their essay, that's when self-loathing hits, that's when behaviors start, and it's usually under the surface, and parents don't understand why. And so this is how we teach them on this slide, is like we start talking to them about how to plug this into a calendar and
Yeah.
how time is flexible. So, we can handle things coming at us. We can handle, all of that. But these are like big life skills to really schedule in, make that time to do that. And so this is kind of what we do here. Now, as far as I encourage students to do something called a Sunday night meeting with families. It's so important. So when they do is they sit down and literally mom and dad with their calendar and with whatever your family calendar looks like, and you sit together and you plan out what your week looks like. This is so important for middle schoolers, and especially if you have any kind of neurodivergent child, it's so helpful because you're modeling, you're building a skill, you're showing them that they're important because they're adding in information into that, which is helping with relationship. And again, middle schoolers are all about relationship, even with their parents. And so this is a really great thing that I work with families, and it has been a game changer for families, just like alleviating all the stress. We talk all the time about having those launching pads and having stuff ready the night before, and just going through all those things. Those are all critical in middle school, because you will see a lot of times, obviously in middle school, their sleep schedule starts to change. So
Yeah.
mornings, and it's a biological thing. It's nothing that
It
they're
is.
doing. their
No.
their little circadian rhythm has changed,
Mhm.
so they're tired in the morning and they can't function. It's real.
No. They can't. I used to teach a cross-curricular unit with the science teacher on circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
And my thesis was at your age, you are more like a cat than like a human because of
Hey,
your circadian rhythm. And I love
yes.
that. Sarah, whenever you talk, I'm always blown away by how you are really addressing like the whole child. You
Yes.
know what I mean? And I think that's so important when we're thinking about our middle schoolers because it's such a time of physical growth. You're going
Yeah.
from a child's brain to an adult's brain. And
Right.
this kind of planning is so wonderful because it's flexible. This isn't like something where it's like, well, from 7 to 7:15, and then from 7:15 to 8 o'clock. It's like very fluid so that they
Yes.
can get better in that time management. Now, one thing you brought up earlier, more towards the beginning of the webinar, were sometimes like skills gaps or
Mhm.
times where students are having trouble understanding something. So we have a strategy that anybody can try. If your favorite middle schooler is struggling with content, tell us. I love Skim and Scoop. I use it with college students too. Tell us
I
about
use it
Skim
for
and Scoop.
myself.
Yeah, it does. It helps with everything.
It does.
Yeah.
So this strategy, and I just want to tell you the benefits of it first. What I have personally seen, I have seen it reduce anxiety in students with reading. So one of the big things that parents come to us, one of their number one things, and what I see in the classroom and what I see with my students is their reading comprehension and anything to do with reading. They don't want to read. They're struggling to read. A lot of those standardized tests are paragraphs and pages long and they're not sure
Yes.
how to tackle it. So this is a great test taking strategy. This is a great, it seems what I have learned is it seems to spark a curiosity in some, in whatever they're supposed to read, even though they don't have a natural interest in it.
Mhm.
It breaks down large reading tasks so they're not so overwhelmed because I show them super quickly that you can get kind of a real big high level idea in just a couple minutes
Yeah.
because so much, and this is again, I'm all about the data and what's showing up on our standardized testing, especially at middle school. We're having a hard time figuring out the main idea from the details. And so this is a great strategy to help that. It also keeps them focused on all of their, if they have a speaking engagement or speech that they've put together, I make them skim and scoop their own speech to make sure
Yeah.
that they've stuck to topic and it's what they're wanting. So those are all amazing things. And then the other benefit I just want to tell you about, and just a personal example. So one of my seventh grade ELA classes that I was teaching, um, they were like every other seventh grade class when it came to standardized tests, they roll their eyes, they don't want to read. I have some of them just answering questions and they look like they belong in third grade after they're done. And I said, what happened? And they said, well, I just don't have time to read. Okay, honey, you have 3 hours to take that test and you finished in an hour. You have plenty of time. So then I taught this. And so this particular school tested 3 times a year. On
Mhm.
their mid-year test, they came running up and were so excited because they used it on the test and they were successful. And then
Mhm.
I've had students come back that are using this on the SAT when they get to high school and they're like, this is working and it's crazy. So let's talk about how to do it. So you skim the text, which I know seems super weird, but we actually tell them. And when you challenge a middle schooler not to read something, what happens? Exactly. So we challenge them that. We're like, you're not reading. You just find me the words that are being repeated, go circle all of them. And
Mhm.
then we go through and then we identify the repeating words, and then we're highlighting those. And then I always have them do like a partner check and see if they're coming up with the same. So we look at those words that are repeating all the way through the article, and then we dive down, we identify where the paragraphs are, and then we start to say, well, what's repeating in this paragraph? So without reading a thing, don't read, do not read. What is this about? And I mean, it is like they want to do, I got it, I got it, I got it. I mean, they just
It's
get
like
excited
magic.
about it. Yeah.
I use this with a student in college in finance classes, and her finance textbooks were giving her major anxiety. And
Yes.
we used it. I had her take a picture with her phone of a textbook page. We loaded it into lesson space. And first we did skim and scoop together because it was intimidating.
Yes.
Then she did it solo. And it's amazing because this is my I'm going to speak now as an ELA teacher. So students sometimes get very intimidated by not knowing what they're going to read. So if you
Mhm.
pick up, like To Kill a Mockingbird, you read the back of the book. Oh, okay, murder trial. We're in the South. You have a handle on what you're going to read. When it comes to standardized tests, there is no blurb. This gives them a strategy so that they can figure out, just like you said, Sarah, the main ideas from the key details. And it really increases confidence for
Yes.
students. And you can see on our screen here, this is one where we've skimmed and scooped, and now you can see on the left-hand side, we have like keywords, main ideas for each paragraph. So it's like you have that little blurb, that little outline of the whole darn thing. So this is an amazing strategy you can use for any text. And you told us earlier about the way our sessions are set up. And you've talked throughout this entire webinar about the value of reflection. Talk to us a little bit now about reflection and why it's so important for middle schoolers.
Well, it's really kind of, again, cementing some of those skills that we're working on, just getting them
Mhm.
in habits. We're establishing habits. We're going from the cognitive to the automated. And so when the automation stage where we want them to automatically get to self-reflection, but that takes practice and accountability. So what we do after every time that we've taught a skill, such as skim and scoop, we are going to talk through and see how it worked for them. Because
Yes,
again, this is a tailored product. We are not interested in just like, well, here's our stick and go do what you're going to do. No, 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 no. We're going to take it. We're going to make sure it's working for the student because guess what? Again, like Rachel said, we've got a deep bench with deep strategies. And
mhm.
so we can find another one. But all we're asking is that the student actually try it and really, really give it that what we all, back in the days, my grandfather used to say the good old college try. And so, you want to go in there. If you promise to do that, I promise to assist you and I promise to give you things that are different, that don't work, and I promise to stick by you. And so
Yeah,
you can see from this what we do, what you use it for, how did it work, did it not? Sometimes strategies work great for maybe test prep, but not great for homework or vice
right.
versa. And so again, we're giving them a toolbox of things to pull from. I will also say at middle school, this happens a lot. They will tell us up front, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. But I've worked with students for multiple years, and in a few years, they're ready to go back to that and go, oh, yeah, you remember that one thing? I sure do. Did you want to try that again? So, again, it's that stages of change, it's getting their buy in, it's establishing relationship. Rachel, like what you said, we're not here to judge. They're not going to disappoint us per se. Like, we're just here to love on them and help them to success. And so we
Yeah.
kind of become a safe place for them to be able to
Mhm.
kind of, play with things where stakes are super low. Because in this,
Yeah.
and I forgot to mention the other reason why this is so important, middle schoolers versus this just generation versus all the generations, that perfection paralysis, they are struggling to start anything that they cannot have guaranteed success, which
Yep.
we want to actually encourage failure. In fact, the jobs that haven't been created yet, and especially in the tech industry, they actually build on failure and they encourage it because they know the next best thing is going to be better. And
That's
so
right.
it's again that growth mindset and just constantly talking these things. And once you hear it long enough, you start to believe it.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to get into the Q&A. We already have some great questions in the chat that I'm just going to start asking. But as we're doing Q&A, if this is connecting with you and you are interested in learning more about us, we have executive function coaching, subject tutoring, test prep, college consulting, whatever you want. We have experts on our team that know how to encourage and support that in your favorite learner. Scan our little QR code. I'm sure there's going to be like a link that you can click pretty soon in the chat. Oh, there it is. As if by magic,
Sick.
a little link that you can click. Okay, so amazing questions already. I'm going to scroll. Okay, so our first one is from Charlene. Charlene says, my daughter gets A's, so she doesn't think that she has a problem, but
Mhm.
she's always doing everything at the last second. How do you convince kids that they need to develop these skills?
So this is how I've done it. We always, and this is why we get to know our student. This is why our program managers take time to identify what they're into, what their hobbies are, all the things that can match well with a coach. But this becomes about relationship. And this is how I work it. So maybe we're not talking about school right now, but we're
Yeah.
going to talk about something else that she's really into and about, let's say why I'm picking this, I don't know, but let's say it's tennis. So let's say she's a great tennis player. Is she procrastinating that one? Is she expecting to show up and be, all of that? And so again, that's a backdoor situation that we get them to. We just have lots of conversations. We try things out. What I have found is that when a student connects with the coach, and they get to know them. And again, if this is the only issue, there's probably some other issues that we probably could identify through a Metacog survey. Then we're able to kind of again backdoor it, come back to that until we can start to practice in low stakes environment and showing them how much it helps. It also probably depends on how old she is as well and what grade she's in. But this is what I see a lot is that we have students that are straight A students, and then all of a sudden at some point all of a sudden all their grades drop and we're in panic mode and all the things. So
Mhm.
that's kind of how I go about it. Rachel, do you kind of do the same?
I actually deal with this. I've observed this a lot in the students that I work with, middle school through college, where the the strategy, I'm going to put that in air quotes, strategy that works is I wait till the last moment, a miracle occurs, and then I
Right.
get all my work done. And here's what I think is it's really hard for us as adults, that we have to recognize that for the kid this is actually a method that works because the work is done. And one of the
Mhm.
things that Charlene shared is that her kid is getting great grades. And
Mhm.
I see this a lot in
Mhm.
high achieving kids that I meet with who have executive function deficits, that they actually will start to see that procrastination is the route to the A. And there's
Mhm.
a lot of mythology about that too. I mean, like, I think if we think about it, we can think of some great Hollywood movies where there's a genius where it's like, it's midnight, I have the idea, you know? I tend to talk with students about stress level. And I will ask them, does procrastination feel motivating for you or anxiety producing? Do you like
Mhm.
how you feel when you do work this way? Would you be willing to try to do work a different way? Many times they will, if they say that the procrastination feels motivating, that is also a big marker for me of why they keep doing it
Mhm.
because there's
Yes.
a positive feeling. If it feels anxiety producing, that's normally my first route into, would you consider changing this in order to feel a bit different? And
Right.
a lot of times they don't, if they don't like how they feel, then that can be an inroad to having, a better strategy or to try to do things a bit differently. So, I mean,
Mhm.
I hope that that connects with you, Charlene. I also see that your kid is really into hockey. So this is a very, I mean, oh God, the hockey kids, not like the other athletes aren't amazingly motivated, but there's something sometimes about the hockey kids. I think it's the skates. That's my my thing. But those, I mean, that's it's a demanding sport. An incredibly fast sport. You know what I mean? So I think that that could also be a way using that motivation to tap into other motivations.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is one. As soon as I read this question, I was like, oh, I got things. I know Sarah's going to have things to say because I got things to say. Summer says, how can I support our child who's in seventh grade when the learning management system is not consistently used by teachers, so expectations are vague? I want to support but not be super hovering. What do you think about that one,
Take
Sarah?
it, Rachel. I know
Okay.
you're dying on this
Yeah.
one.
So this is a big frustration for us as adults who are supporting learners.
Yes.
Those learning management systems are not always used consistently by teachers, even in the same cluster. So, for example, when I taught middle school, I'm a very tech focused teacher. So I'm giving them a monthly calendar. I have everything posted. My colleague down the hall, not so techy.
Mhm.
She's like just writing stuff on the board. She's telling them, she has like everything for them in the classroom, but the tech piece wasn't really there. So one of the things that I try to do when I work with students is to have them first identify, where are your teachers giving you the information? And it may be that they don't know. It may be that this is like something that Sarah always talks about, that the grown-ups are assuming that
Mhm.
kids get it. But the kid
Mhm.
may not know, oh, look on the board
Right.
where the teacher has written assignments, where the teacher has written homework. So the first step is to increase that awareness of, where do I find the information? And then find a method so that every child can feel confident. I have a student in my sessions who is not a planner person. And this may be, you may have a kid that's like, they don't want to do iCal, they don't want to do a little planner. I have a student who will put post-it notes in
Mhm.
his sketchbook. He loves to draw. So on the front page of that sketchbook, he will write assignments on post-it notes and label them. And then when the work is done, he takes the post-it notes off. So,
Exactly. I have
and
one
you know
too.
what? If you have a student that connects with something like iCal, that connects with a planner, even easier. But it's make them how like increase awareness and then find a method that's going to work for them so that they know where all the stuff is. And it may just be summer that for your particular middle schooler, that little like awareness or system isn't happening yet. But once your student figures that out, it'll work for you. What do you think,
Mhm.
Sarah? Like, what methods have you used to work with kids for this kind of thing?
So you covered a lot of the things. The only thing I would add to that is, again, I always tell parents the line to use with middle schoolers, I'm going to trust you, but I'm going to verify. So that Phil's not hovering, right? So it's a
Yeah.
trust but verify situation. Again, this is an executive function deal. This is like my student that wouldn't talk to teachers. At that point, I would tell your child, okay, you need to, and as a coach, I would say this too. You're going to email if we don't know what's happening in history because the learning management system isn't updated. You're not sure where to find the work. We are going to develop an email together and send to your teacher, and you're going to copy mom on it. So
Mhm.
again, everybody's there, but you are leading the charge. The other thing is really if a parent is CC'd on an email, they're much more likely to be answered than, and I hear this all the time in sessions, like my teacher never answers, they never answer me. I continue to send messages, they never answer. But we've had great success if we've copied a parent. So
Mhm.
that's just a little tidbit. That's kind of in addition to everything that Rachel said, because that's exactly right. We just need to find a way for your child that connects with them and recording what those details are if they're not being recorded for them in an LMS.
Absolutely. So I think that we covered all of the questions that are in the chat so far. I'm looking at the time here, and I'm pretty sure we have this scheduled till like 12:45. However, if folks want to ask some more questions, we can address those. I want to make sure that there's time for everybody. But I also just want to share how delighted we are that everybody joined us today. If you want to learn more, we are always here for you. You can scan the QR code. There are links in the chat right now that you can click. We have a wealth of content on our website as well. More webinars that you can watch at any time. We are so delighted that you joined us for this week of webinars, all focused on executive function. If you were just here today or if you were here for all three. Oh, and a question just came in about the recordings. Everybody that's here is going to get an email with a link to the recording of this session within 24 hours. So if you missed anything or you came in late or you want to review anything that Sarah talked about, that's all going to be given to you. Thank you so much for everything. We are delighted that you were here and we hope to see you when we have one of these again. And Sarah, I just wish I could talk to you every day.
Oh, Rachel, I feel the same. We always have way too
Yeah.
much fun.
Okay, thank you for everything and everybody have a beautiful day.
All right. Bye bye.